So let's talk about ethical AI. You hear that phrase literally everywhere now, right? Companies are promising it, governments are trying to regulate it, and activists are demanding it. It has absolutely blown up into one of the biggest buzzwords in tech.
And this isn't just talk. We're smack in the middle of what some researchers are calling an AI ethics boom. Think about it. In just the last few years, more than 200 different sets of guidelines have been published all over the world. Everybody, and I mean everybody, from Google and IBM to the Pentagon and the European Union, has a document talking about principles like fairness, privacy, and accountability. But this explosion of ethics talk brings up a really crucial question. When we all use a word like, say, privacy, are we even talking about the same thing? Does that word mean the same thing to a software developer in Silicon Valley as it does to a military strategist at the Department of Defense? I'm not so sure.
Well, to get to the bottom of this, a pretty fascinating study did something kind of brilliant. Researchers took 10 of the most influential AI ethics documents published between 2018 and 2021 and just did a deep linguistic dive comparing the actual language used by 4 very different groups.
So who were these 4 groups? First up, you've got academia, the university researchers and ethicists, asking those big philosophical why questions. Then you have industry, the tech companies that are actually building and selling this stuff. Third is the military and defense sector, folks using AI in some of the highest stakes situations imaginable. And finally, national governments, the people trying to write a rulebook for everyone else. You can already see how these are 4 very different worlds.
So let's jump right into what they found, and we're going to use one of the most common words in this whole conversation: privacy. This one example really shows you the core of the problem.
I mean, we can probably all agree on a basic definition like this, right? Seems simple enough. The right to control your own data, be left alone. But watch what happens when this simple idea gets pulled into those different worlds we just talked about.
Okay, just look at this contrast. On one side, you have the European Union. For them, privacy is a fundamental human right. It's all about your individual sovereignty over your own information. But for the US military, it's not a fundamental right. It's a balancing act. Individual protection is something that has to be weighed against the needs of national security. It's the exact same word, but a completely different starting point. And the definitions just keep shifting. For a big tech company like IBM, privacy becomes a technical puzzle to solve. You hear things like privacy by design. It's a feature you engineer into a product. Meanwhile, if you look at government documents from Israel, privacy is framed as a collective thing, where one person's privacy has to be balanced against the safety of the entire community. Now, this quote from the research paper sums it up perfectly. I know it sounds a little academic, but the idea is actually simple and super powerful. These big institutions don't just use ethical terms, they absorb them and completely reshape them to fit their own goals and worldview. They make the words their own. So if one little word like privacy can mean so many different things, what does that tell us about the bigger picture? What are the overall priorities for each of these sectors? What do they really care about when they talk about ethical AI? Let's start with academia, and no surprise here, their focus is squarely on how AI affects society. Their biggest concerns are things like fairness, privacy, and this really important idea of equitability, which is not just about being fair, but about whether AI actively helps reduce the inequalities that already exist in society. These are big picture social justice questions. Now, let's pivot to industry. Look how different this is. Their priorities are way more pragmatic, really focused on the product itself. They care about safety. Is this thing going to break? Explainability. Can we explain to a customer why the AI did that weird thing? And fairness, but often in the sense of making sure the product works for everyone, and frankly, to avoid bad press or lawsuits. It's all about building trust and managing risks. Okay, so at this point, you might be thinking, all right, I get it. Different groups use different words. So what? Well, this isn't just some academic word game. These differences have massive, real-world consequences. For starters, it means that any attempt to create a single, one-size-fits-all set of rules for AI is probably, doomed to fail. I mean, if a regulator and a tech company can't even agree on what fairness means, how on earth are they supposed to create a law that actually enforces it effectively? This also explains so much of the friction we see playing out in the news every day. When academics and activists are demanding social justice from AI, and tech companies are focused on their product goals, while governments are prioritizing national security, they aren't just disagreeing. They are fundamentally speaking different ethical languages. They're talking past each other. So where do we go from here? Is it hopeless? Not at all. The research doesn't just point out the problem, it actually offers a pretty clear path forward for creating smarter, more effective ways to govern AI. The recommendations are pretty straightforward. First, we need to stop pretending one size fits all and start developing guidelines that are actually tailored to the unique needs and realities of each sector. Second, we have to get these groups talking to each other to try and bridge these language gaps. And finally, we need to actively push for important ideas like equitability so they don't get completely ignored. So, if you take one thing away from all of this, let it be this. There is no single, fixed definition of ethical AI. Its meaning is constantly being shaped, twisted, and redefined by the goals, the culture, and the priorities of whatever institution is saying the words. And that leaves all of us with a final thought. The next time you hear a company, or a politician, or a general promising you ethical AI, the most important question you can ask isn't if their AI is ethical. The question is, what do you mean by that?